Good morning, everybody. Shefa brucha v'atzluche. We are in Parashat Tzave. ואתה תצווה את בני ישראל, ויקחו אליך. Very interesting in our Parashat. The first thing we have to talk about is the fact that Moshe Rabbeinu, the name, is not mentioned in the whole Parashat. Thinking ואתה תצווה, ואתה, but you cannot find the name of Moshe Rabbeinu. The question is why. So there are a few explanations that are being given by our sages. The first one is connected to today. Today is Zayin Ba'adar. Zayin Ba'adar is the birthday of Moshe Rabbeinu and also is your time. He died today and he was born today. So this is why in our Parsha was chosen to be the symbol of the life of Moshe Rabbeinu. And we can say it from the point of view, first of all, humbleness. Because when we see with the Goyim, for example, with the Christians and the Muslims, the whole ceremony goes around the prophet. If it's with the case of the Christians, it's when he was born, where he was going, what he was doing. Am Israel is different. In our religion, we don't mention, even on the birthday of Moshe Rabbeinu, the name of Moshe Rabbeinu, in order to show that we worship the God and not the prophet. The prophet is only, let's say, a connection that connects us with the word of God, especially Moshe Rabbeinu. This was the greatest. And from the other side, he is not even mentioned on the day of his birthday to show us that we don't worship the prophet, we worship God. Doesn't matter how great the prophet is. The case of Moshe Rabbeinu, lo kan b'Yisrael ke Moshe Rabbeinu, was nobody like him. Still, he's a human being, and we don't worship human beings. That's, by the way, why we don't even know where he's buried. That we, chas v'shalom, don't make an idol out of it. So we see, first of all, the difference between our belief and all the other religions. Muhammad, the same thing. Here he tied his horse, and here he did this, and etc., etc. We all know those stories. So now, this is the first reason. The other reason is the fact that is not mentioned is because when they did the golden calf, and Kadosh Baruch Hu wanted to destroy Am Israel and to build a new nation from Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu says, if you do this, wipe me out of the book that you wrote. Wipe me out. And they say, klala shel tzadik afilu al tnai chayevet le'arish. But if you say something, even if you say it in a condition that this and that, and the condition didn't happen. For example, here, he says, if you don't forgive them, wipe me out. But he forgave them. But still, because he said, wipe me out, something had to happen. And the Kodesh Baruch Hu put a whole parsha. That's the only parsha from the day that Moshe Rabbeinu was born that his name is not mentioned. In this parsha, because this is also the week that he was born and he died, and another reason because he is getting punished for another case. When we remember when God told him, go to Pharaoh and take my people out from Egypt, and Moshe Rabbeinu argued with God for a whole week. At the end of the day, God told him, you know what? You will pay for it. And how did he pay for it? In our Parsha is he was supposed to be also the high priest, the Kohen Gadol. But says you will stay a Levi, and you will take the Keuna Gdola and give it to your brother Aaron. And this is another interesting point when we're talking about Moshe Rabbeinu and Aaron. There were two brothers that loved each other so much that it was unbelievable. Even though Moshe Rabbeinu was afraid when he argued with the Kodesh Baruch Hu about going to Egypt, because he says, what, you've got my brother there, he's there all the time, and now I'm coming from the outside, and I'm going to take the lead. It's not fair, it's not nice. He says, don't worry. When Aaron will see you, he will be happy from his heart. Not happy like, sometimes people on the smile from the outside, inside, oh, why didn't I get the job? No, he will do it with the whole heart. And that brings us also to our Parsha, as we said, he was punished here. We have three things here. First of all, the idea that he was born and he died and was born in time the week that we hold the Parsha. The second way is not mentioned because he says, wipe me out of the book. So he's got punished. And the third one, as we said, is giving the Kunat Gula to Aaron. But the way he's doing it, there is a Tehillim, a Mismor Tehillim, a very famous one, that we all sing it all the time. In Matovu Manaim Shevet Achim Gam Yachad. What is in Matovu Manaim Shevet Achim Gam Yachad? Who are the brothers? Oh, look how good it is, those two brothers sitting together. Yored al Zakan Zkan Aaron. Keshemen Atov Yored al Zakan Zkan Aaron is written in this Mizmor Tehillim. And it says like, there's twice written Zakan. So first of all, the brothers we talk here, it's not like we think something general speaking. It's Moshe and Aaron. Those are the Achim. The brothers, who are those brothers sit together? This is Moshe and Aaron. And they were so close and so unbelievable, as we see the side of Aaron, where he saw Moshe Rabbeinu coming and taking the job from him, like he's going to be the leader of Am Yisrael, after he suffered the whole time there, and he comes from the outside. Now when Moshe Rabbeinu is crowning Aaron to be the high priest, it's said that Perek Tehillim, he was putting the oil, the Shemen HaMishcha, the oil to crown him on the beard of Aaron, and he felt, it's written twice Zakan, Zkan Aaron, says the Midrash, first Zakan is the Zakan of Moshe, and the other Zakan from Aaron. When he was spilling the oil on the beard of Aaron to crown him as a high priest, he felt that the drops of the oil are on his beard. Unbelievable. They were so close and so loving that even though he didn't do it on himself, he did it on Aaron, he felt that the oil is dropping on his beard, and this is not allowed. He says, don't worry. This is Moshe and Aaron. So we see the reason that the name of Moshe Rabbeinu is not mentioned in our Parsha. We had three reasons. And there is another interesting thing. It's the anava of Moshe Rabbeinu, his humbleness. So, and today, this morning, I brought a thing from the Ten Chelkein. It's a little book that every day is a portion of, you have a part of the Parsha, you have a part of the Gemara, and Mishnah, whatever. And today, there was a very interesting point there mentioned. It says, the Admor Mikalib says, how is it that really Moshe Rabbeinu was punished because what did he do? Did good for Am Yisrael, so punished? Says it's not a punishment. On the contrary, it's a great thing. It's a reward. What does it mean? Imagine to yourself, for example, you all know the figure that the glass bottle of Coca-Cola looks. Everybody knows it. It's a unique look. Imagine to yourself, you see the bottle without the words Coca-Cola. What will be your first question? Why isn't Coca-Cola written on the bottle? In other words, if our name is not mentioned in the Parsha or in the Torah, so what? It's not mentioned. But when the name of Moshe Rabbeinu, that everybody knows, that everybody understands that God is talking to him in our Parsha. So everybody is asking, why isn't his name mentioned? And then you tell the story of Moshe Rabbeinu. So, in other words, instead of this being a minus, is a plus. From the fact that he's not mentioned, we learn the greatness of Moshe Rabbeinu. Unbelievable. And talking about the greatness of Moshe Rabbeinu, there is another interesting question being asked in our Parsha. We were talking last week about the Mishkan, the tabernacle, and all the things around it. And we're going on in our Parsha. As we said, there are 4 Parashot that talk about the Mishkan V'Kelah. But the interesting thing is that the beginning of the Parsha is, we're talking about the oil, the olive oil for lighting the menorah. And the question is this the right place to put oil of the menorah? What does it have to do with anything now? You didn't finish the job. After you finish the whole thing, and you will build, and you will do the clothes for the Kohanim, and then there is Bashaktoret, and then you finish, and then you build it, then you can talk about the oil to light the menorah. But now, what are we talking about? What we don't light the menorah yet. It's only at the end. Then we light the menorah. Now we don't light the menorah. So why do we mention the oil for the menorah to light the candles if we don't do it yet? Nevertheless, you don't see anything about sacrifices. What sacrifices you should bring because it's not finished yet. It's an interesting question. And also interesting enough is, it's written that the oil should be only shemen zayit zach katit lama'or. And the explanation is, it's only the first drop of the olive oil that we can use to light the menorah. The second drop is not good. You cannot use. So imagine to yourself how many olives you need in order to have the oil to light the menorah. So why? Why is it so important to have this purest oil? And then it's also written, La'adlik ner tamid. Ner tamid, it lies forever. And ner tamid is in singular. But we're talking about the menorah, there are not one candle. There are 7 candles. So it should be in plural. But it's written in singular. So the Mefarshim said it's written about the Ner HaMa'aravi, was this candle that was lit all the time, day and night, the whole year, and there was a long period of time that it was by a miracle. It didn't turn off all the time. And this is the Ner Tamid. And when we take all those things together, we realize that the idea behind it is, first of all, to understand that when we talk about the menorah, it's the light of the Torah. And the light of the Torah has to come from the purest source. So it's only the first drop to teach us that only the first drop, in order to light the menorah, you need the first drop of the olive. It has to be pure, 100% pure, because otherwise we see a lot of things that happen. For example, I think a year ago or something, somebody approached me after shul and told me, I am on the way, I'm doing tshuva now, but my wife is not with me. And she wants me to still drive on Shabbos, and like when we're talking about not opening the fridge, because when you open the fridge, the light turns on, it doesn't know how to do it, whatever, and a few other things, and she doesn't agree with me. She says, okay, you want to do tshuva, it's no problem, but you cannot disturb the household. And he says, and because of Shlom Bayit, I don't know what to do. So I asked I asked a few rabbis. One rabbi told me, Shabbos is Shabbos. You cannot just compromise with the Shabbos. Shabbos is the sign of a Jew. You cannot just, because your wife tells you not to keep Shabbos, to drive on Shabbos, that you're allowed to do it. You're not allowed to do it. And I didn't know what to do, so I went to another rabbi. And you see, again, I got a few rabbis that told me, you know what? It's no problem. You can still drive on Shabbos for your wife for Shlom Bayit. Says, why? Says, how could? Says, because you see, God knows that you really want to keep Shabbos, but because of Shlom Bayit and your wife, you drive. So it's not a problem. Says, what do you think? He asked. Says, sorry, what do you mean? Says, I'm not a rabbi, I'm not Mosek Halachot. Yeah, no, I hear you all every day. I want you to tell me what you think. I says, you know what? Okay. You can do compromises with your wife, but you cannot do compromises with the Shabbos. Shabbos is the sign of the Jew. And you have to understand, it doesn't matter what your wife wants. And I want to understand, does your wife believe in God? She says, yes. So if she believes in God, and if I understand that you love each other, and she accepts the fact that you're doing tshuva, but a few things she doesn't like or doesn't understand. So you sit together, you love each other. You have to explain her that that's what it is. I felt that on his way to do tshuva, it's not easy. So, you always look for excuses to go on with your normal life. And it's very easy to find an excuse. So his wife tells him, you know what, I want you to drive on Shabbos to take me here and there. And he really inside, it's very hard for him not to drive on Shabbos. Now he's got an excuse. His wife wants him to drive on Shabbos. This is Shlom Bayit. So he also inside is very tempted to do it. And that's a very hard thing. So I told him, you have to understand. Doing tshuva is not easy. If you mechalel Shabbos here and there, and you're mechalel Shabbos, so it's okay. It's a hard way, and you will do it slowly, but surely you will get to the point of keeping Shabbos 100%. But to think for a minute that you're allowed to drive on Shabbos because your wife said something, that you're allowed to do a sin because of your wife, especially on Shabbos, this is unacceptable. You have to keep all the mitzvahs. If you know that you are allowed to do something, what's going to happen? You're going to break it. You're not going to do tshuva eventually. It will, instead of going up, you will go down. Because you have to understand, the Jewish law is one thing. And if somebody decides that one of the mitzvahs is not acceptable by him, he doesn't agree with it, he is a kofir. You know, I'm not saying, yes, unfortunately, we sin. We are not 100% tzaddikim. Everybody's got his problems. But we have to know that we sin. You know, I've been in Toronto a few years ago, and I met this one of the big shots of the community, the Jewish community. He falls from a conservative community, and they have their conservative community, a Reform community, and an Orthodox community. And he told me that all of them, they live all together nicely, very nice. Says, oh, well, very nice. And then he took us to a shiur, I think 3,000 places. And the interesting thing was that there was Ezrat Gvarim and Ezrat Nashim. It looks like it was like built like a normal shiur, like there was a section for the men down there and a section for the women up there. And then he explained to us the way it all developed. He said in the beginning, the problem was, you know, people live far away from shiur. So the Rebbe says, you know what, you can come on Shabbos to shiur with a car. But only to shiur. You go to shiur and you go back. Because otherwise there would nobody come to shiur. So it was far away, everybody. And, you know, we all know what happened. They didn't go only to shiur. You know, you're on the way. Okay, let's go to the mall. Let's go here. Let's go there. And eventually the night drove on Shabbos. And then they said this, and then they said that. And eventually what was happening? In the beginning, there were sitting men separated from women, women up there and women down, and women up and men down. And then it says, why? This is discrimination. We want to sit all in the same floor. Okay. So they took the women down, and there were one side men, the other side women. And then it says, wow, we want to sit, I want to sit with my wife. And the wife said, I want to sit with my husband. It says, what's so terrible? Wow, okay. It says, no, slowly but surely, we got to where we stand today. So in other words, the conservative, if you think about it, are not really, they're more similar to the Reform than to the Orthodox. And it all began from what? From driving on Shabbos. Is to understand when you start this, when you decide that one law doesn't work for you, it's a problem. You know, you can come in an Orthodox shiur sometimes, also abroad in a lot of places. There are people that are not 100% religious, but they want to come to shiur on Shabbos. So they go and park the car a few streets near the shiur and walk to the shiur. And, you know, it's not okay, but it's okay because they know that they're not allowed to go right on Shabbos. So eventually they will go, when you will mekarev them, they will talk with them, the rabbi will talk with them, and they will see how beautiful is our religion. So eventually it will come from them to understand that they have to keep another mitzvah, and eventually they will also keep Shabbos, not going by the car on Shabbos. But if they think for a minute that you're allowed to go with the car on Shabbos, where does it end? We all see it. You know, reform is reform. And so I want to understand, I want to explain something. We want all the Jews to come together and do tshuva. But we cannot accept people that do compromise with the religion and change it. Because this is like also Jesus, he was also Jewish. So they are Jews? No, they're not Jews, they're Christians. In other words, anybody who takes the Torah and starts to playing around with them, this is not Judaism anymore. But we want him, we want the whole world to believe in God. But we have to understand the borders. We have to understand what is reform? Reform is to reform. And that's what they do. And they do it all the time. You know, when they started, they took from the Siddur out all things that mentioned Zion in Yerushalayim. And now suddenly they love Eretz Israel, and they want to come and they want this and they want that. What happened? They reform it all the time. They change it, they play around with it. And that's not the way. That is not our way. This is why it has to be the purest oil of all from the menorah. And this is also why it is here in this place that the Torah, before going to the clothes that the Kohanim are going to wear, the Torah tells us what oil you have to use to light the menorah. Because before a human being comes into the picture, he has to be that the Torah has to be from the purest source. Now, when you understand this, then the Neratamid, then the light will light forever. Now you can do the clothes for the Kohanim, and now the human being can go into the picture. This is why we start talking about the building. And we stop and we talk on the oil before we talk about the human being, the Kohanim, that are going to do the job in the temple. In order for them to understand that it has to come, the Torah is not something to play around. The Torah, the light of the Torah has to come from the purest source. This is why only the first drop of the olive oil can be used for the menorah. This is Moshe Rabbeinu. This is the day that he was born and was dying. Moshe Rabbeinu, he was the Neratamid. He came from the purest source, and he tried to give this purest source to us. And this is, when we look in the shiur and we see the Neratamid, this is the lightest light all the time in shiur, it's called Neratamid. It is against this candle, special candle in the temple, in the Beit HaMikdash, that was lit the whole time, to show us and to tell us and to remind us that we need the purest source in order to have our candle go forever. And just to finish it off with understanding more about the candle. You know, something on sometimes on Yom Tov, we have a light that we want to cook on Yom Tov, and suddenly the light turns off, the candle. So we take a candle and we go to the neighbor to take fire to light the candle, and then we can cook if you want. Now, if you live in a house with the neighbors inside, Bait Mishutaf, with on floors, it's okay. But imagine to yourself that you live in a private home and you have to go to the neighbor, means going outside the house and take the candle, light it in your friend's house, your neighbor's house, and then take it back to your house. Now imagine to yourself it's raining, it's windy. What is the chance that you will get back with the light, with the candle? Very poor. Wind, rain will turn it off. Imagine to yourself, Am Yisrael. This light, Neratamid from Am Yisrael. We went through hell, the Holocaust, the Spanish Inquisition, and pogroms. And what didn't we not go? From the spiritual side, the assimilation, from the physical side, trying to kill us, to torture us, to send us away. But the light is still lit, and it will stay lit forever, because our source is the purest source of all. And that's the way we should keep it. That's the way we should go on to understand. So every time we go into shul and see this light that is lit day and night, Neratamid, to remember what is our power. Our power isn't Torah. Our power comes from the Torah. And when it comes to it, it has to be pure, because if it's not pure, you start playing games, who knows where it can lead. And this is also to remember the greatness of Moshe Rabbeinu. That he was so great that he is not mentioned in the Parashat, and we don't need him to be mentioned. We understand who we're talking about, and we ask ourselves, why is he not mentioned? And from this, we learn about his greatness. And when you take all those things together, Moshe Rabbeinu, he brought us the Torah from God. And he is the one that was the most humble guy in the world from one side, and the greatest guy from the other side. And it all depends on the purity, the source that Moshe Rabbeinu was passing on to us. And when he see the golden calf, he broke the luchot. Then, Baruch Hashem, we got the second luchot. Now we have a fight between good and evil. And if we go on and lighting our menorah with the first drop of the oil, no compromises, then we will find our candle lighting forever. And this means that this is also the message we have to transfer to the next generation. All the best. Have a nice week.